How'd you like to listen to .NET Rocks with no ads? Easy. Become a patron. For just $5 a month, you get access to a private RSS feed where all the shows have no ads. $20 a month will get you that and a special .NET Rocks patron mug. Sign up now at patreon.netrocks.com.
Hey, Carl and Richard here. As you may have heard, NDC is back, offering their incredible in-person conferences around the world. NDC Porto is happening October 16th through the 20th. Go to ndcporto.com to register. And check out the full lineup of conferences at ndcconferences.com.
Coming at you from the eye of the storm, it's .NET Rocks Hurricane Edition.
Yeah, that was Colleen Lavin, and Richard and I are here in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in an Airstream, in a thunderstorm.
Exactly where you want to be.
Absolutely.
In a thunderstorm.
I'm sorry, is this a large metal box? I'm pretty sure this is a large metal box
It is.
on rubber tires.
Will this be the last ever episode of .NET Rocks once we're all fried by a thunderstrike?
Found in a smoldering ruin, an SD card. What's on it?
We better make it worth it before our imminent demise.
Oh my God,
Right.
so much fun.
I don't know if robots think she's funny, but I'm pretty sure I think she's funny.
It's pretty funny.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll talk to Colleen in a minute, but first we have a little housekeeping, starting with Better Know Framework.
Awesome.
Roll that music.
All right, man, what do you got?
Okay, so this was another suggestion by one of the AppVNext guys. I think it might have even been Brian McKay.
Mm-hmm.
This is Cursor, the AI-first code editor. So this is like a combination of GitHub Copilot and, VS Code, but more tightly integrated.
Interesting.
And it's at cursor.so.
Nice.
And I'm just going to read some of the comments that they posted here. Started using Cursor yesterday, and I'm blown away. It's how Copilot should feel.
Oh.
I'm completely off VS Code now. Great work, you guys. 2 concrete examples. One, it generated a new view set for me using the correct schema of my Django models that were mentioned in a completely different file. That's interesting. 2, I asked it a time zone question about a cron tab, and it generated the answer in context in the correct place in my celery beat schedule. I love things like this because it feels like I'm reading science fiction. Again, in a completely different file, and there's about 100 files in the whole project. It's awesome. So yeah, this is just one of the things. People are going nuts about this, I guess. And you can download it for Windows at cursor.so. There might be a Mac version too, I'm not sure.
That's awesome.
Not on a Mac. So who's talking to us today, Richard?
Grabbed a comment off of show 1605, and that's the one we did back in 2018, so it's been a while, about IoT and edge computing.
Oh, yeah.
Jared Rose. And we actually recorded that one in Prague at the Update Conference back in the day. And this comment's from Topper Kane, who's been a regular listener for a long time. Hey, Topper, hope we're good.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you already got him used to code by, but don't hold that against us. Topper said, you guys did a good job discussing the creep and uncanny valley aspects of IoT and sensor gathering. Too much data about individuals. But one of the exciting things about good edge computing is that it can be used to overcome these issues. Pushing compute to the edge can allow you to get value from data while not ever transmitting it or saving it outside the environment it lives in. I had a fascinating discussion with a theme park technologist about doing sentiment analysis on people's facial expressions. They were rightfully concerned about people being creeped out that their mood was being tracked by the entire theme park.
Yeah.
But I suggested that if they never sent a frame of video or identifiable information, but deployed devices with cameras that only sent alerts when an edge device detected high unhappiness in a ride line, then they would preserve people's sense of privacy while still getting a significant portion of the data they actually cared about. This has important implications for designs of all sorts for connected devices. I do want my fridge to tell me when I'm low on milk, but I don't want it to send pictures or even summary data of the contents of my fridge to General Electric.
I don't care about my fridge telling me when I'm low on milk. In fact, you've heard me rant against that for many, many times.
Dude.
Why does my fridge need Wi-Fi? I'm sorry.
No.
It should not.
I fully agree with this, by the way. But you know what bugs me even more? Wi-Fi connected microwave.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, come on. Are you kidding me?
I'm putting something in the microwave for 60 seconds on average. I do not need to control it from my phone. I don't care if that makes me a Luddite.
I'm going to be like my father and stand in front of him and go, come on!
All you do is leave the door open, then the Wi-Fi signals aren't going to be heard anyway.
Yeah, put your phone in there.
There you go.
Microwave your phone.
Let me finish Topper here. If you can deploy machine learning smarts all the way to the machine and keep them updated there, then device manufacturers can provide value in a much more respectful manner. This is already being supported in a very cool manner by Azure Cognitive Services running inside locally hosted containers. I hope that both the market and regulators drive IoT in this direction. What I love about this is it's 5 years old.
Yes.
Like, Topper nailed it 5 years ago.
Yep.
This is exactly the direction you're moving in with machine learning models to the edge and that sort of thing. I just don't know how much people think about privacy in this context. I think most people see a camera and presume you're misusing that data.
So you have two problems. You have the privacy problem where, companies are legally bound to disclose what they're using for you.
You would hope.
And we hope. You also have the problem of understanding on the part of the consumer. They may not understand that it's for their own benefit, and they may think Big Brother's watching, blah, 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 I don't like that. And then on top of that, if you do say, hey, we're taking pictures of you, we're gathering telemetry for your benefit, then a smart user will be able to game it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a no-win
move
situation.
Faster's line, look pissed off.
Yeah, exactly. look pissed off, and then somebody's going to come over and offer you a hot latte.
Yeah, something. It's very interesting. Anyway, great conversation starter there, Topper. And thanks so much for listening to the show and contributing as always. And a copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. Actually, I suspect you already have one. Yeah. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And you should definitely follow us on Twitter or X or whatever the hell they're calling it these days. But I'm also on Mastodon, and as of yesterday, Richard, I'm on Blue Sky.
Oh, welcome to the Blue Sky Cloud.
So I'm also on LinkedIn and stuff, and I just figured I'm just going to send people to carlfranklin.com because all of my social media links are there.
Yeah.
But what's your Mastodon?
Mastodon is Rich Campbell at mastodon.social. My Blue Sky is Rich Campbell as well. My Threads is Rich Campbell as well.
And your Twitter /X is at Rich
Campbell as well. Yeah. So do your best to try and grab one name, right?
So you might want to have do what I do, like make a richardcampbell.ca website and put them all there.
Yeah, I got an About Me somewhere with a bunch of that stuff. I should probably clean that up. But,
oh, well.
There's nothing like the digital effluent that scatters across the internet.
Terrible. And then when it goes down, people remind you, too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, your static website is down. Did you not pay your bill? Well, anyway, let's introduce Colleen for sure. Colleen Lavin is the lead developer advocate at Particle with a background in software development and product management. She's worked with NASA.
Cool.
We're in royalty here, in the presence of royalty, and was featured on Gimlet Media's Startup podcast. Great podcast. When she's not playing with robots, more on that later, or coding, you can usually find her lost in the woods or on Twitter at Colleen Codes. Welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for having me today.
Well, you like this rustic kind of podcast environment here?
I know it'll be edited out later, but I find the sound of the rain very calming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is kind of epic. And look, this whole Airstream trailer sort of approach to recording shows is like style over substance. Like It's very cool.
Yeah.
But it is a metal box, not your ideal recording environment.
We're going to try our best to remove the white noise from the background, but every once in a while you might hear some thunder or an increase in some white noise or whatever.
Or maybe the large static bursts of us being electrocuted by a lightning bolt.
Only if the audience is really lucky. And we're really not.
All right, I'm taking my hands off my computer right now.
I've got my feet off the metal ground.
Yeah.
So, do the robots think you're funny? What is that all about? That was Richard's comment.
Do the robots think you're funny? So I just wrapped up a few days ago, actually, a full run at the Edinburgh Fringe with a comedy show entitled Do the Robots Think I'm Funny? It's a show where I wrote a program and on stage had a robot with me that listened for the sound of the audience laughter and kept what I like to call the laugh score throughout.
That's great.
And so the program would check in every so often, and when the laugh score wasn't where he wanted it to be, and I don't know why I called the robot a he, but his name is Murderbot, so statistically I felt like
it's probably accurate.
worked. So whenever he didn't think that I was as funny as I should have been at that point in the show, he would heckle me on stage.
Nice.
Oh, that's
And
great.
then at the end, I would run an analysis, and Murderbot would say whether or not I was funny that day. But then, and here's the part that I liked a lot, then no matter what, the audience would get to vote whether or not they gave a hoot what Murderbot said.
Oh,
So, and whether or not it matched up.
what was the result?
The result overall, well, there were like 22 shows of it.
Wow.
Oh,
So the result changed a lot. I would say the first week it wasn't as accurate as it was later on, because especially the first couple days,
yeah,
I had to retrain it with new data.
sure.
I recorded every show on my phone and then would add that every night. Well, okay, I skipped 1 or 2 nights, but I would overall add it to the model so it would become more and more accurate.
Okay.
And overall, I was fairly lucky. The robot did think that I was funny a lot of the time, but more importantly, whenever the robot said I wasn't funny, the audience would start booing it.
Oh,
So-
that's awesome.
I almost liked it more when the robot disliked me.
Of course.
Because the level of solidarity I felt with the audience in that moment.
Absolutely. And, you can both, use the robot as the scapegoat.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not me that's not funny. Don't boo me. Boo the robot.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So, this was actually an audience suggestion. A lovely audience member pulled me aside and gave me the suggestion that I added in. So, whenever the robot heckled me, the audience was allowed to boo. And if they booed the robot, that got added in to my laugh score as a positive.
Nice.
Because they liked me. And that was a little less accurate. Because I will say the problem with that is when a lot of people say the word boo at once, it doesn't necessarily always sound like the word boo.
Right.
Because you
It
have
sounds like,
one person
"Oh,"
starting and then the
yeah.
other, and it's a lot harder with the inflections to do boo versus boo.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So was this an anthropomorphic robot? Did it look human, or was it just a box?
So,
Or somewhere in between?
a little bit in between. I can share pictures with you guys. I can send you a picture of him.
A Murderbot?
Murderbot, yes. So, his original name had been Gort from The Day the Earth
That's
Stood
great
Still.
reference, yeah.
Such a good
Tattoo.
movie, but I kept on wanting to murder him, and so I called him Murderbot.
So wait, you called him Murderbot. So whether it's a he or a she or an it or they is completely up in the air.
I mean, Gort was also referred to as a he.
Right.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I felt
You got me
bad
there.
calling the robot it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Something in
Yeah.
my brain was like, if I'm sharing a stage with this creature, I have to add some sort of professional level of respect
Yeah. At
to
least
this
should have a
creature that I've
name.
programmed to hate me.
Oh, so how do we jump into IoT from
Well, this is
Murderbot?
such the best IoT story I've ever heard.
It is.
Honestly.
It is. I mean, everything is going to go downhill and boring from here. I'm sure.
Oh, aren't you sweet?
Well, for what I see.
But you do, you have a quote, I'm air quoting here, real job working for Particle.
I do. Particle was very lucky to let me work, or very nice. I was very lucky. They let me work from Scotland and take a little time off to do the Fringe.
Oh, nice.
But also, it's a whole month long. I wasn't taking a whole month off
Yeah.
because
Right.
can you imagine the amount of emails I would have to catch
Oh,
up
yeah,
with at the
yeah.
end of a month?
It's the end of the world, man.
It's
You have to declare email bankruptcy at that
no, you have to fake your own death at that point. But yes, I run the DevRel program at Particle. It's a wonderful company. We do connected microcontroller boards. Basically, what that means is you get a hardware board that you can immediately connect to the cell signal or Wi-Fi, depending on what model you got.
And as I recall, Particle is Photon. Isn't that the product?
That was the first ever board, actually.
Okay, I'm just old, that's all.
Wow.
I mean, well, no, here's the thing. The Photon 2
Oh, okay.
is a
So you're
brand
clever
new
with your naming,
board.
too.
It's funny because this is the first time they've ever had a Photon, or we've ever had a Photon 2 or anything with a 2, but...
So you saw hardware. So I'm looking at the Photon 2, Monitor 1, Tracker 1, Wi-Fi devices, cellular devices, and then you obviously have developers because you're developer relations. So how do we program these things, and are they different from any other .NET kind of platform that we would program?
Yeah, so I would say the big thing is you program them primarily in a C, C++ sort of language.
Oh, cool.
Officially, the framework's called wiring, but anyone who's used an Arduino before will recognize it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the way you program it is very similar to programming Arduinos, but you can also program it from. We have a couple IDEs that you can use. There's the web-based one, and there's also my favorite, which is Particle Workbench, our Visual Studio Code extension.
Nice.
Great.
So you work in Studio with an extension loaded in, and off you go.
That's pretty much... You plug in... I might actually have one in my backpack.
Oh, that's right.
But you just plug it in, set it up, and go. Very easy setup experience. I'm actually really proud of how we redid the setup experience recently. You just go to setup.particle.io and plug in your device. Everything gets set up really quickly, which doesn't sound like a big deal.
Until you've done it. Like,
my favorite thing about Particle devices, and our general goal, is making it so things just work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't have to install a million drivers.
I've done the battle of the Arduino. It's like, just plug into my USB port, please. Please.
Oh, yeah. And I love Arduino devices, too.
Yeah, but it's a battle.
It can be a battle, especially if you're trying to do a Wi-Fi connected device or...
Well, and is that typically what you do, is connect just by Wi-Fi, not plug it in or through USB?
We do plug in by USB because it's a lot... I have found that the setup process when you do that's a lot faster, a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like, and we do have alternate means of setup, but I fully recommend just plug in, run the setup tool, and go, because it's a lot faster, and Web USB is just such a wonderful tool.
It is interesting how much better it's gotten from the old days of trying to do serial UART connections. And
So how does the REST API come into play here? Can we use any kind of client to program the device via HTTP REST?
Yeah. You can, that's essentially, yes.
Yeah.
I don't have a very long answer for that.
But so I'm bringing back to the language, right? If you want to write directly on the device, it's like a C, C++ and hybrid or something.
Right, but
like
you
that.
can program with the API in
any language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not Fortran. Any language that works with a...
Yeah.
I guess if you really wanted to.
So are the programs that you're writing going to go on the device, or are you manipulating it? How does the programming work?
So that highly depends on what you're doing. So you will almost certainly be writing some firmware.
Right.
But what a lot of people like to do is write some firmware, flash it to the device, and have that mostly communicate with stuff that goes on outside of the device.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Like, I'm a big proponent of using webhooks to do everything I can.
Yeah, sure.
And so while you would be pushing that to it, it'd be communicating with, let's say, I don't know, I just always use IoT devices to control my lights because that is the...
Well, the blinking LED is the definitive
Hello World,
right?
It is. You've got to... I always like blinking the LED in the Morse code for Hello World.
Nice. Yeah, that's legit.
I remember getting a basic... You were talking about Basic Stamp. This is years ago.
Years ago, yeah.
20 years ago, maybe?
Yep.
And I said, what's that? And you said, oh, I'm sorry. You're about to go down a rabbit hole.
I'm going to take you to a place.
Come back.
Yeah.
And so I bought a thing to, it was like one of the first little device programmers that I used. And you're right.
Yeah.
It did go down a rabbit hole.
And,
So-
and you have to apologize for it. He's like,
You apologize
I have
immediately.
stolen hundreds of hours of your life just by saying these words.
It's a simultaneous apology and a "you're welcome."
Yeah. Exactly.
Welcome to a new obsession because you didn't have enough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why buy an IoT device when you can make one?
Nice. I haven't burned my fingers enough lately. Always the problem with these products. I mean, inevitably, like once you get past the blinking LEDs, like what am I doing here? What do I need this for? You know,
What don't you need it for?
and that's the problem. It's like it's almost too much.
Yes.
Like you don't have enough lines around it. Like what did I do with the basic stamp back in the day? I wired it to a hydraulic actuator on my server closet because A, I have a server closet, and B, the air conditioner would fail. And
Yeah.
when the
So you have to put a button pusher on it.
right, and so when the temperature would get above 80 Fahrenheit, 27 degrees centigrade, that little gizmo would just activate and push those doors open. Right. And the basic stamp for a couple of bucks was enough logic to be able to set those rules and then send a notice like over temperature, keep the machines from melting down.
So one of the first IoT device projects that the AppVNext guys and I did when we got together was a fartometer on a Raspberry Pi with a methane detector.
Oh no.
And you basically would just put it on a table and it would detect the smell of methane before anybody's nose would. And it go beep, beep, beep.
Open a window.
Yeah, we thought that was just great.
I just think you're wearing it in the right place.
Don't bring that thing to a farm.
There you go.
Yeah.
But
Always going up.
But, at least Richard's example was practical. I had thought of, like, when you said a hydraulic actuator, I thought of something that I could stick with Velcro over the coffee maker button.
Right.
And so I could actually turn on my coffee maker and start the coffee process when I woke up in the morning. So by the time I'm out of the shower, I don't have to go downstairs, turn it on, go back up, blah, blah, blah.
And can't use your timer because you never know when you're waking up.
Never know when you're waking up.
Right.
Exactly.
well, that's actually something like that is one of the common gateway projects that I like to call to makerdom.
It's like meth, only different.
Yes, the common gateway drug meth. What a common gateway.
That's where you start.
You gotta start with meth, then move on to the hard stuff, like CBD.
I like you. You can stay.
Thank you.
You're going to work out just fine.
Good, I was worried. Please don't kick me out into the rain. Oh, yeah. There are really common gateway projects, though. Like, one of my favorites that I see over and over again, and it's my favorite because of how surprising it is, but when you think about it, it's not too surprising. One of the most common things that will get people into making hardware is getting chickens.
Oh, right, yeah.
Chicken-based
automation is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. Chicken-based projects are huge. Coop monitoring.
Yeah.
Light projects, because apparently, and I do not have chickens, by the way, but I've learned a lot about chickens by reading these chicken projects and figuring out why they need to exist. Like, apparently chickens lay fewer eggs in the winter, and part of that is due to their sun exposure and temperature exposure.
Right.
So, one really cool project I've seen is controlling heat lamps in the chicken coop by checking local weather data and adjusting for it daily.
Nice.
Or coop monitoring's another big one.
Open and closing the gate so when are they allowed out in the yard? Sort of safety around all of that. Certainly temperature monitoring, things like that. There was one of the top Twitch channels way in the beginning was a chicken coop where you could spend 25 cents to feed the chickens.
Yeah.
So they had a little automation to drop a little feed out, right?
That's great.
And how
Fat
fun
chickens.
is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another one of our projects at AppVNext, this was a real company that we did some work for, and Scott Routley did the work, actually Canadian, was for this company that had lab mice and in experiments and stuff, and they had warehouse with all sorts of lab mice, and they wanted to detect when there was something going on with the mice. So they had all sorts of sensors, like ammonia sensors and other things that they could detect, chemicals that they could detect in the air that would say, oh, there's something wrong with mouse 234. We can go and look at them and see if they need to, if they've expired or they're sick or something like that.
They're eating each other.
Oh,
yeah.
That is
These mice are horrible.
an application I haven't thought of. And I grew up around lab mice.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, I spent a weird amount of my childhood, which I suppose is any amount of my childhood, hanging out at a pharmaceutical testing lab.
As you do.
As you do.
You mean
Look,
Thursday?
No, any day I didn't have school.
Saturday night at my place.
Look, they let me hang out there. I would like to point out that nobody in my family worked there, but my soccer coach did.
Wow.
And she thought it was fun having me there. Her kids also hung out there.
It was a place to hang out.
Yeah, we had a club in a storage closet.
Oh, there you go.
And a lot. But yeah, lab mice.
Yeah.
It's Euthanasia Day. Let's go.
No, we weren't allowed in the killing room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Bring your children to a place that has a killing room.
I started.
There was, it was the strangest, most wonderful place because it wasn't just a pharmaceutical testing lab. Because the dad, my friend Abby's dad, he also was a carpenter, and he had his carpentry workshop there,
right.
and there was a vegetable garden out front and a little playground in the courtyard.
All you need is a latte shop, and you can just never go home.
This is the ideal daycare. It's like I have sharp tools and rodents. What more do you need?
I asked my mom about this recently.
In hindsight, as an adult.
I asked her about it because I mentioned this in my comedy show, and my parents came to see it once. So that meant that I got to interrogate them in front of an audience.
Nice.
Oh,
because
great.
people, if you see that story on stage at a comedy show, you will question it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That does not seem real.
It does not seem real.
Right.
So I asked my mom, and her answer was, who am I to turn down free childcare?
That's great.
Very practical.
Yeah. It's like, there
Some
was
of us
science.
use Sesame Street.
You liked it there.
Right? You were learning things.
Yeah.
They
obviously.
had a lot of bookcases with classic novels in them because the lady who ran the lab, Fran, her kids grew up there.
Right.
So there were shelves of board games and books, and
Wow.
you could make a really great fort and a conference table.
Yeah. Nice. It's everything you need. And I'm going to interrupt for one moment for this very important message. And we're back. It's Don and Rob.
Hey.
Campbell. That's Carl Franklin. We're with our friend Colleen Lavin and laughing our butts off. The rain has subsided. None of us have been electrocuted.
It's a good day.
It's a good day.
And I wanted to ask you about some of these other devices like Monitor One, a field-ready and customizable gateway for monitoring industrial equipment. What makes this, is it more specialized in terms of the sensors you can put on it than Photon 2?
So not necessarily. You can technically put a lot of the same sensors on here,
Mm-hmm.
but the difference for Monitor One is we noticed that a lot of companies were making basically the same thing, and it wasn't part of their product. They weren't selling it or anything. What they were doing was making this sort of monitoring system because
That's what you need.
that's
Yeah.
what they needed.
Yeah.
So we figured, why not make their lives a little bit
Well,
easier?
also, waterproof casing's a pain in the butt. Like, I've done a bunch myself, right? Having to buy the bulkheads and an IP67 seal, and, like, it's a nuisance to make a proper protective case.
It's such a pain. You have to usually redo it 3 or 4 times. And I will say there are some great templates on the particle community because people have done something like this over and over.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to do it over and over and you just want something that works right out of the box,
Yeah.
does what you need to, and is also customizable for
Yeah.
your specific needs,
There's
then
also the subtle things like, is this not got enough heat dispersion in it? Like, if I
Yes.
put this board in here, running it at full board 24 hours a day, is it too hot?
And monitoring is one thing that we see people do with our devices over and over
Right.
again. Like, I know I'm not supposed to have favorite customers. However,
I have some favorites.
one of my favorites is this guy out of Wisconsin, Jeff, who uses particle devices to monitor maple syrup tanks.
Wow.
Which
great.
are called, by the way, sugar bushes.
Yeah.
How cool is that? And
Wow.
if any other Particle customers are upset that they were not listed as one of my favorites, Jeff sent me maple syrup, so
Yeah, all right. Just saying.
So what would you monitor in a syrup tank?
temperature, humidity,
fill level.
Yes, leak detection's another
Outside
thing.
the tank.
Like, for him, one of the reasons he started his company was he is a maple syrup hobbyist.
Right.
And so he had a maple syrup tank, but it was about, I think, a 45-minute drive from his house.
Right.
And so he had to drive there pretty much daily to check up on it.
Yeah. Remote monitoring is a huge part of this equation.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that I want stuff monitored. It's that I'm nowhere near it when it's being monitored.
Yep.
Yeah. Nowhere near. Like, field kits in particular, getting something that will survive the weather.
Yeah.
Oh, man. One of, another customer who I very much like, a company, the first company, by the way, was called Maple IoT.
Nice.
Shout out to them and their SAP Spy. But another customer who's really done a lot of great open source work on casing is this guy, Chip, who runs a company called Sea Insights. And
Chip.
yes.
That's
Charles
just-
McClelland.
That's awesome.
But he goes by Chip. He is genuinely a delight. So I realize whenever you say the phrase genuinely a delight, it sounds sarcastic,
Yeah.
but it really isn't. He's wonderful. But he's run into an issue. So his company makes park monitoring systems.
Wow.
So national and state parks can know their user data, because you don't necessarily have a check-in at the state park.
Yeah.
And it's good to know, like, who's going on what trail, stuff like
Sure.
that. However, those devices are living outside forever.
Right.
Yeah.
He has had devices that have actually gotten struck by lightning before.
Oh, right.
Wow.
I'm thinking generally not survivable, like just smoking bits when you find them.
He did say that it was still intact,
Oh,
but
wow.
he chose not to continue using it.
On my first album, I programmed the drum tracks myself. So we gave Chip Franklin album credit. And, it was Franklin Brothers.
Well.
Chip Franklin drums.
I do very much like the idea of a hardware guy named Chip.
Yeah, it's great.
It's kind of the rule.
All right, so here's a question. When we talked about IoT in the past, and admittedly, we haven't in a long time because there was a time when it was a craze.
Yeah.
And then it kind of died down. But, yeah.
But did it?
But, well, it did for us on our show. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember talking to guys that say, well, you want a prototype with something that's easy, takes sensors on and off. But if you're going to do production, you want to get the boards manufactured.
Yes.
And so you guys, I see, have an option for that. So you prototype with Photon 2, and then you have this thing called the P2. So what's that?
Yes. That basically is the board that we would recommend for production. You'd get that made or attached to a PCB, and it isn't something that you would need to use a breadboard for
Right,
instance.
no breadboard.
Like, it's more akin to if you open up any piece of technology, it looks more like that.
Yeah. But the code is all burned in. It's all more secure than a prototyping board, right?
I would actually, so yes and no. So Particle in particular, our boards all have extremely good security. So you could, because look, I think it's very important to have security for home projects as well, because a lot of our hobby board projects are used to control people's homes.
Right.
You don't want that to be easily hacked.
Sure.
The Particle device iOS automatically has built-in security. A lot of the tools for security are more often used in a production environment, but they are very secure devices overall.
So why would you want to get a board manufactured for retail, let's say, rather than having something that you can, you have to make piecemeal or whatever?
Oh, well, because if you're in a production environment, it's a lot easier. It's a lot. It's more compact.
You can mass produce them.
You can mass
I
produce
guess
it.
the question is, how many do you? At what point does it make more sense to have the manufactured product? Like, if I only need 2 of these things, then maybe staying on the prototype system, a little bit of hard wiring instead of breadboard. But there's got to be. I'm just wondering if there's a threshold. It's like, if you need a dozen, just have them made.
I would actually go a little higher than that.
Yeah.
So it also depends on your purpose.
Sure.
Like, for instance, there are some people, like educators. I'm never going to tell an educator to move to a P2 over a Photon 2 because this is great for a learning environment.
Yeah.
But if you have already tested out your prototype and you're wanting to start manufacturing at scale, I think when you make your first order of, let's say, 100 devices, that's around the time you should start thinking about moving to a P2, moving to mass production.
It's a good number, 100. Because that's enough that it's like, this is just a lot, right? Like, now I have a lot.
Yeah.
So, but you should also have now refined your design enough that making it more compact, like, does it take a few iterations to actually get to a P2 product you're happy with? Or is it going to be right the first time?
Oh, I don't think anything's right the first time. And it would not.
Why are you disabusing my illusions?
Oh, okay. That is a classic programmer fallacy. Look,
it's one of them anyway.
You know what I have found the most? The programmer who is daydreaming about a project is the most optimistic person in the world.
Sure. Nobody's happier about building hardware than somebody who's never built one before.
Yeah. Or somebody who has built something in the past and now has selective amnesia.
Yeah.
Well,
there's kind of a brain damage.
That time it went wrong, but you know what?
It'll be fine this
time. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to have the best time ever.
Most of the folks that I've known who've had to build hardware like this end up moving to Hong Kong and going to Shenzhen every day for 3 months to get to a product they're happy with.
Yeah.
At least, and consider it a win.
When Particle started out, actually, it was part of a hardware accelerator, I believe, in Shenzhen. This was way before I joined Particle, but that is essentially what they were doing every day.
And I think I ran into them. Why I knew the name off the top of my head was like, geez, I know I worked with this at one time, and I used to do gigs in Hong Kong, and went to Shenzhen and saw the insanity that was that place. I don't know what it's like today. I don't know that I'd go today, but it just was a realization that the physical construction of these things is way harder than you think. There's so many little problems that crop up.
Yeah.
And that's why Particle exists, to make that a lot easier, because a lot of the times when you're building, whether you're building an at-home project or you're building something to scale, there are things that you don't think of that just start to go wrong. So Particles, our job is to make that a lot easier. So you can go from, hey, I want to build this thing, to, ooh, I just built it really fast. Like, when I used to be really into hackathons back before I needed sleep to function. And my secret weapon at the time was actually a particle photon.
Right.
Because if you had a particle photon, you didn't have to worry about getting everything put together, getting all of the little features set up, because you already had a device that could connect within 20 minutes of setting it up.
Yeah, you were already up and running.
You could have something. We have these things at Particle, like Particle Publish and Particle Subscribe, where you could make an event and just listen to that event. And so in like 5 lines of code, you've got basic monitoring done.
Right. You're grabbing data off of a sensor and being able to direct it somewhere.
And that's extremely useful for prototyping and getting something out the door really fast. But it's also something that scales very well.
Right.
Now, is this right? I'm looking at the Photon 2. Is it really $9?
For this month only, actually. Usually it's $19. It is on sale for the month of August.
$19. Wow.
And to be clear, we're recording on August 31st. When you hear this, it isn't August 31st anymore. So.
It isn't. So if people reach out to me, I might have a couple coupon codes for them.
Oh, that's
Find
awesome.
me on Twitter at Colleen Codes.
But you are talking $20.
$20.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, that's not including sensors, obviously, right?
Yeah.
No, but you could get some sensors pretty cheap.
Yeah. The sensors aren't the expensive part.
The device in general is, for the Photon 2, we specifically wanted to make an affordable device that gets people excited about building stuff.
Right.
And here's an Edge ML kit, machine learning kit.
Yes!
For Photon 2 for $60.
Yes.
What's that?
So we partnered up with Edge Impulse Machine Learning to build a kit that uses the Edge Impulse particle library, basically makes it so your Photon 2 can run classifications and stuff on it. Because the Photon 2, and my memory is a little shot today, but so I'm not going to quote exact numbers, but the Photon 2 has amazing memory. It has this very powerful capability. So you can actually run this AI software on it. So for instance, one of my favorite, we've got a couple example projects, and one that I find very delightful is a project called You're Muted, where you can, this, by the way, only works if you put it on your own device, because we're not going to have other people controlling the mutes.
Oh, what could go wrong?
Yeah. But it listens for the term "you're muted" to be said.
Right.
And if it is said, then it automatically unmutes you if you are muted.
Sure.
And it does nothing if you're not muted.
Yeah, that's the classic, COVID era problem of Zoom, right?
Happens once a call.
Somebody's like, and I'm mouthing words, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you're muted.
Though it is really good if you've just been asked a question and you can't think of an answer.
Right.
Oh,
you
yeah,
just
right.
mouth a couple words for a minute, and then you're like, blah, 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 blah. And then by the time you actually have to unmute yourself, you've thought of things. It's terrible, by the way, if anyone on your team knows how to read lips.
Right. Insert that video kit in. But we're basically describing Topper's comment. Right?
Yes.
It's like, here's the bits to make the thing you were talking about. I mean, obviously, this is not going to run GPT-3, but
no,
probably
but
an
it
image
could interface with it to an
course.
extent.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like,
but you're talking about maybe an image recognizer or an expression recognizer. Like, this is reasonable to run in a device
you guys
like
have
this.
so many products here. It's not just the three that I listed off.
Oh,
like
there's a ton.
Wi-Fi antennas and NFC antennas.
Yeah. Oh, there's
Adafruit feather wings.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. It's compatible with Adafruit's Featherwings, so that makes it even easier to start out. So
what's Featherwing?
A Featherwing is basically a shield that you can attach to your device that already has some stuff in it to get you started. Like,
for interfacing more.
Yeah, for interfacing. So for instance, it could have a bunch of sensors already soldered on, and then you can just go build your project immediately. And there are some really cool Featherwings out there. I have so many of them, because when I first started,
you are in the business.
Well,
you have an
it's
excuse
also,
to have all of them.
When I first started at Particle, we all get an education stipend, and they told me I was allowed to use it on parts if I wanted to. So Adafruit got the majority of my education stipend.
Oh, nice. Do I have to click +1 on every one of these things? Can you just send me all?
Just send me Adafruit, please.
I'll take them all.
Yes, this skull shield, the skull-shaped featherwing is very vital to my development as a programmer.
This is part of my training.
And you know what? The big problem with that, by the way, and the problem that I see with so many makers that you were kind of referring to earlier, is paralysis by the sheer amount of options out there. So, like, one thing that I've seen happen over and over again that I'm trying to combat by making cool projects available, but is getting a device, thinking, well, I'm going to make something cool with it, and then thinking, oh, there are too many cool things out there.
Right.
How can I do this?
You really have to pick one.
Yeah.
Picking one is I know people say naming's the hardest part of computer science, but picking something's even harder.
Picking the project, yeah.
So what's next for you? What's in your inbox after you leave here?
Well, I've just been at Edinburgh Fringe for a month and then came straight here, so I think I'm going to go home and sleep for a little bit.
That's a good idea.
But after that, I've got a couple other conferences coming up, and I'm absolutely stoked. Particle is sponsoring this year's Bay Area Maker Fair.
Oh, wow.
And we have got some pretty cool stuff in flight for that. We've got a very fun booth coming along and some interactive projects.
Where's the Maker Fair?
It's in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So this year, Bay Area, it is
Do
on...
you usually use one of the convention centers?
No, this year it's on an island.
Oh, wow.
And
I'll look it
Alameda
up.
Island, I think?
Oh, in Alameda.
Alameda
Because
Island.
that's across from San Francisco.
Yes,
you go to it via Oakland.
You've got I think we're all flying in to the Oakland airport and going there. It looks beautiful. And I haven't been to a big maker event since pre-COVID.
Right, yeah. 3-4 years.
It's so exciting. It's funny. The whole team right now, we're like giddy little kids excitedly talking about it. Like, we can do this, we can do that. Do you think these people are going to have that booth? We're making a little carnival game.
I'm just wondering, folks went head down for a few years. I wonder what they're going to come out with. What do they bring into the fair that, might surprise us all?
Well, that's actually a really interesting thing too, is
Mare Island. No,
Mare. Okay.
Island. Okay.
Mare. I don't know why I thought.
No, totally legit.
I think I know someone who lives on the other island.
There you go.
And they were talking about it. But it's very interesting to me how much Makerdom has changed in the past few years, because when Particle started and when I first started getting interested in maker stuff, it was much more in person. Like, maker spaces were everywhere. Now they've kind of gone away a lot. You could go to a maker fair and see a lot. There are still some amazing maker spaces, but what I found is, since a lot of these tools are getting cheaper,
people
and
have their own.
People were stuck at home.
People build out their kits.
Be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't have a 3D printer nowadays. I got a 3D printer years before I got a 2D printer. Like, I only just purchased a 2D printer a couple months ago.
It's when you mix the two up and you actually print a Word document in plastic.
I know. It's very wasteful.
The other thing, I got into the routine of, there's a couple of great mill spots, these digital mills. So I would just send my files to them and they'd send it back to me. And they'd send me back the objects. Right? And often in a single day turnaround. So you could experiment to your heart's content, really. It's a little more expensive than just having the machine yourself. I also appreciate, like, having a PLA printer yourself, but then sending it out for a different plastic or a mixed plastic or even metal. I've had one rendered in sintered aluminum. Yeah,
or even resin.
Yeah.
Like, I am not going to have a resin printer where I live because I have asthma, and
they're a bit smelly.
The fumes are bad for your lungs.
Yeah, you need a vent.
I'd like whoever uses a resin printer to have very good ventilation.
Yeah, I'm going to argue ventilation for PLA and ABS. Like, it's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
You'll live longer.
And masking up's always good when you're doing anything that involves a lot of fumes.
See, now you're talking about the range. How far do you go down the maker path? Right? It's like when you have a room that has a mask requirement on the outside of it, you've gone a certain distance down the path.
See, I'm very excited because I've been living in apartments for a while, but I just bought my place for the first time with my partner, and that means I get to have a room with pegboards on the walls. I get a pegboard room.
So you need a hood fan right away. Like you need room to be venting.
No, we've agreed that anything that requires venting will happen in the garage.
Right.
Because we're lucky enough to have a garage. Right. And also, my pegboard room is right next to the kitchen, so we're not mixing those fumes.
No, that's not a good combination. Why does the ramen smell like resin? What is that?
Did I accidentally put plastic in my tea again?
You don't have to. There was already plastic there.
Microplastics for every meal.
Well, Colleen, this is a hoot. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Fun to geek out and talk, and it looks like some great products you have here.
Yeah, like the basic stamp. There goes hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
But joyful hours.
Joyful hours.
Isn't it so much fun?
Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks.
.NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got a transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a